on 14 October 1878. 35. After many experiments, first with carbon in the early 1880s and then with platinum and other metals, in the end Edison returned to a carbon filament. 36. The first successful test was on 22 October 1879. 37. 38, and lasted 13.5 hours. Edison continued to improve his design and by the 4th of November 1879, filed for a U.S. patent for an electric lamp using a carbon filament or strip coiled and connected to platinac contact wires. 39. Although the patent described several ways of creating carbon filament including using cotton and linen thread, with splints papers coiled in various ways. 39. Edison and his team later discovered that a carbonized bamboo filament could last more than 1,200 hours. 40. In 1880, the Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company steamer Columbia became the first application for Edison's incandescent electric lamps. It was also the first ship to use a dynamo. 41. 42. 43. Alban Mann, a New York lawyer, started Electrodynamic Light Company in 1878 to exploit his patents and those of William Sawyer. 44. 45. Weeks later the United States Electric Lighting Company was organized. 44. 45. 46. This company did not make their first commercial installation of incandescent lamps until the fall of 1880, at the Mercantile Safe Deposit Company in New York City, about 6 months after the Edison incandescent lamps had been installed on the Columbia. Hiram S. Maxim was the chief engineer at the United States Electric Lighting Company. 47. After the great success in the United States, the incandescent light bulb patented by Edison also began to gain widespread popularity in Europe as well, among other places. The first Edison light bulbs in the Nordic countries were installed at the weaving hall of the Finlaysons textile factory in Tampere, Finland in March 1882. 48. Louis Latimer, employed at the time by Edison, developed an improved method of heat-treating carbon filaments which reduced breakage and allowed them to be molded into novel shapes, such as their characteristic M shape of Maxim filaments. On the 17th of January 1882, Latimer received a patent for the process of manufacturing carbons, an improved method for the production of light bulb filaments, which was purchased by the United States Electric Light Company. 49. Latimer patented other improvements such as a better way of attaching filaments to their wire supports. 50. In Britain, the Edison and Swan companies merged into the Edison and Swan United Electric Company, later known as Ediswan, and ultimately incorporated into Thorn Lighting Limited. Edison was initially against this combination, but Edison was eventually forced to cooperate and the merger was made. Eventually Edison acquired all of Swan's interest in the company. Swan sold his U.S. patent rights to the Brush Electric Company in June 1882. U.S. patent 0,223,898 by Thomas Edison for an improved electric lamp. 27 January 1880 the United States Patent Office gave a ruling the 8th of October 1883. That Edison's patents were based on the prior art of William Sawyer and were invalid. Litigation continued for a number of years. Eventually on the 6th of October 1889, a judge ruled that Edison's electric light improvement claim for a filament of carbon of high resistance was valid. 51. The main difficulty with evacuating the lamps was moisture inside the bulb which split when the lamp was lit, with resulting oxygen attacking the filament. 52. In the 1880s, phosphoric anhydride was used in combination with expensive mercury vacuum pumps. 53. However, about 1893, Italian inventor Arturo Malignani, 1865-1939, who lacked these pumps, discovered that phosphorus vapors did the job of chemically binding the remaining amounts of water and oxygen. 52. 53. In 1896 he patented a process of introducing red phosphorus as the so-called getter inside the bulb. 52. Which allowed obtaining economic bulbs lasting 800 hours. His patent was acquired by Edison in 1898. 28. In 1897, German physicist and chemist Walther Nernst developed the Nernst lamp, a form of incandescent lamp that used a ceramic glow bar and did not require enclosure in a vacuum or inert gas. 54. 55. Twice as efficient as carbon filament lamps, Nernst lamps were briefly popular until overtaken by lamps using metal filaments. Metal filament, inert gas. US 575002. A patent on the 1st of December, 1897 to Alexander Lodygin, Russia. Describes filament made of rare metals, amongst them was tungsten. Lodygin invented a process where rare metals such as tungsten can be chemically treated and heat vaporized onto an electrically heated thread-like wire. Platinum, carbon gold, acting as a temporary base or skeletal form. U.S. Patent 575,002. Lodygin later sold the patent rights to GE. In 1902, Siemens developed a tantalum lamp filament that was more efficient than even graphite acid carbon filaments since they could operate at higher temperature. Since tantalum metal has a lower resistivity than carbon, the tantalum lamp filament was quite long and required multiple internal supports. The metal filament gradually shortened in use. The filaments were installed with large slack loops. Lamps used for Hahnemann, left, and just, right. The inventors of the tungsten bulbs. Hungarian advertising of the tungsten bulb from 1906. This was the first light bulb that used a filament made from tungsten instead of carbon. The inscription reads, "Wire lamp with a drawn wire indestructible. Several hundred hours became quite fragile. 56. Metal filaments had the property of breaking and re-welding, though this would usually decrease the resistance and shorten the life of the filament. General Electric bought the rights to use tantalum filaments and produced them in the US until 1913. 57. From 1898 to around 1905. Osmium was also used as a filament in lamps made by Karl Ora von Welsbach. The metal was so expensive that used lamps could be returned for partial credit. 58. It could not be made for 110V or 220V, so several lamps were wired in series for use on standard voltage circuits. These were primarily sold in Europe. Tungsten filament. On the 13th of December, 1904, Hungarian Sanda Just and Croatian Franjo Hahnemann were granted a Hungarian patent, number 34541, for a tungsten filament lamp that lasted longer and gave brighter light than the carbon filament. 28. Tungsten filament lamps were first marketed by the Hungarian company Tungsram in 1904. This type is often called tungsten bulbs in many European countries. 59. Filling a bulb with an inert gas such as argon or nitrogen slows down the evaporation of the tungsten filament compared to operating it in a vacuum. This allows for greater temperatures and therefore greater efficacy with less reduction in filament life. 60. In 1906. William D. Coolidge developed a method of making ductile tungsten from sintered tungsten which could be made into filaments while working for General Electric Company. 61. By 1911 General Electric had begun selling incandescent light bulbs with ductile tungsten wire. 62. In 1913, Irving Langmuir found that filling a lamp with inert gas instead of a vacuum resulted in twice the luminous efficacy and reduced bulb blackening. In 1917, Bernie Lee Benbow was granted a patent for the coiled coil filament, in which a coiled filament is then itself wrapped into a coil by using a mandrel. 63. 64. In 1921, Chunishima created the first double coil bulb using a coiled coil tungsten filament while working for Hakunet Tsusha, a predecessor of Toshiba. At the time, machinery to mass-produce coiled coil filaments did not exist. Hakunet Tsusha developed a method to mass-produce coiled coil filaments by 1936. 65. Between 1924 and the outbreak of the Second World War, the Fuscatel attempted to fix prices and sales quotas for bulb manufacturers outside of North America. 66. In 1925, Marvin Pitkin, an American chemist, patented a process for frosting the inside of lamp bulbs without weakening them. 67. In 1947, he patented a process for coating the inside of lamps with silica. 68. In 1930, Hungarian Imre Brody filled lamps with krypton gas rather than argon, and designed a process to tin krypton from air. Production of krypton-filled lamps based on his invention started at Ajka in 1937 in a factory co-designed by Polonii and Hungarian-born physicist Egon Orauan. 69. By 1964, improvements in efficiency and production of incandescent lamps had reduced the cost of providing a given quantity of light by a factor of 30. Compared with the cost at introduction of Edison's lighting system. 70. Consumption of incandescent light bulbs grew rapidly in the U.S. In 1885, an estimated 300,000 general lighting service lamps were sold, all with carbon filaments. When tungsten filaments were introduced, about 50 million lamp sockets existed in the U.S. In 1914, 88.5 million lamps were used, only 15% with carbon filaments, and by 1945, annual sales of lamps were 795 million, more than 5 lamps per person per year. 71. Efficacy and efficiency. Spectrum of an incandescent lamp at 2200 K, showing most of its emission as invisible infrared light. Thermal image of an incandescent bulb. 22,175 degrees Celsius equals 71,347 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of the mid and far IR is absorbed with glass, heating it to scorching temperatures. This heats the surrounding air, which rises, helping cool the bulb from the bottom up. Less than 5% of the power consumed by a typical incandescent light bulb is converted into visible light, with most of the rest being emitted as invisible infrared radiation. 172. Light bulbs are rated by their luminous efficacy, which is the ratio of the amount of visible light emitted, a luminous flux, to the electrical power consumed. 73. A luminous efficacy is measured in lumens per watt, Lm/W. The luminous efficiency of a source is defined as the ratio of its luminous efficacy to the maximum possible luminous efficacy, which is 683 Lm/W. 74. 75. An ideal white light source could produce about 250 lumens per watt, corresponding to a luminous efficiency of 37%. 76. For a given quantity of light, an incandescent light bulb consumes more power and emits more heat than most other types of electric light. In buildings where air conditioning is used, incandescent lamps' heat output increases load on the air conditioning system. 77. While heat from lights will reduce the need to run a building heating system, the latter can usually produce the same amount of heat at lower cost than incandescent lights. The chart below lists the luminous efficacy and efficiency for several types of incandescent bulb. A longer chart in luminous efficacy compares a broader array of light sources. Type overall luminous efficiency. Overall luminous efficacy, Lm/W, 40W tungsten incandescent, 120 V, general service, 1.9%, 12.6, 1, 60W tungsten incandescent, 120V, general service, 2.1% 14.5, 100W tungsten incandescent, 120V, general service, 2.6% 17.5, 1. Glass halogen 2.3% 16 quartz halogen 3.5% 24 photographic and projection lamps with very high filament temperatures and short lifetimes 5.1% 35, 78. Theoretical maximum for a tungsten filament incandescent bulb 7.6